There is a hidden pattern, a silent code that appears before every major collapse in history. It's not in the news, it doesn't come as an explosion, it doesn't warn clearly. It starts as a distant whisper, then becomes a growing echo. And when you finally understand what you're hearing, the ground has already disappeared beneath your feet. This pattern is not theory, it's not coincidence. It's a mathematical formula of human behavior that repeats, century after century, like a broken clock that always marks the same hour. It preceded 1929. It preceded 2008. It preceded every catastrophic fall you know. And now, at this exact moment, while you live your life normally, this same pattern is not forming, it's already complete. All 7 stages, all the pieces of the puzzle, all the signals that history always sent before chaos, are active simultaneously for the first time since 2008. Stay until the end. Because what you're about to discover is not about economics, it's about survival. And understanding these 7 stages could be the only difference between you being completely destroyed or being among the few who thrive when everything collapses. Let me start by destroying a lie you probably believe. The lie that economic crises are unpredictable, that they arrive without warning, that they are random events no one could have seen coming. This is, without exaggeration, one of the biggest intellectual frauds ever told to the global population. The truth they don't want you to know is this: no financial crisis in modern history came as a surprise. None, zero, absolutely none. There are always signs. There is always a rhythm. There is always a logical sequence that unfolds like a broken clock, but absurdly precise in its timing. And here's the part that will completely change how you see the world. This sequence is not random. It follows a formula so consistent, so repeatable, that when you understand it, you can literally see the collapse forming months, sometimes years, before it happens. History shows that major collapses follow strangely similar cycles, regardless of era, country, government, or economic system. You can be in 1929 America, 1990 Japan, 2008 United States, or the globalized world of 2025, and the pattern remains identical. 7 stages. Always the same 7. In the same order, with the same characteristics. Stage 1. Controlled euphoria. The collective feeling that nothing can go wrong. Stage 2. Invisible inflation. Money loses value, but everyone pretends it doesn't. Stage 3. Invisible bubbles. Assets inflating faster than their capacity to sustain. Stage 4. Fall of confidence. The system begins to crack internally. Stage 5. Silent capital flight. The big players exit without warning. Stage 6. Initial rupture. The first crack that spreads. Stage 7. Total panic. The moment when everyone realizes simultaneously. These stages don't depend on specific policies, don't depend on leaders, don't depend on ideologies. They depend on something much deeper and immutable: collective human behavior. And human behavior doesn't change. Fear, greed, denial, panic, these elements are constants of human psychology for thousands of years. That's why the formula repeats. That's why it works. And that's why now, looking at 2024, 2025 and early 2026, anyone who understands this formula can see with absolute clarity. It has been activated again, not as risk, not as possibility, as reality in progress. And here's what will keep you awake tonight. This time, all 7 stages are happening simultaneously. Not in slow sequence as normally occurs, but all at once, compressed, accelerated, as if history were trying to compensate for decades of delay in just a few years. But before you understand why this is absolutely unprecedented and terrifying, you need to comprehend each stage individually. Because when you see each piece, when you understand how they connect, when you realize all are active now, the reality of what's coming becomes inescapable. Every major collapse in history begins exactly the same way, with irrational optimism. It's not normal optimism. It's not healthy hope. It's a collective, almost religious euphoria that the future is guaranteed and nothing can go wrong. It's the feeling of invincibility, the belief that this time is different, the conviction that we've finally found the magic formula for eternal growth without consequences. The years before 1929 were marked by this feeling. People genuinely believed they had discovered a new era of perpetual prosperity. The stock market was seen as a guaranteed money-making machine. Everyone was investing, everyone was winning, and the idea that this could end seemed ridiculous. Before 2008, it was exactly the same. The American real estate market was considered fail-proof. Real estate always goes up. It's impossible to lose money in real estate. Banks were lending to anyone. People were buying 5, 10 houses as investment. The euphoria was total. And now? Now we live the modern version of this same euphoria. Look around you and you'll see the unmistakable signs. Artificial consumerism fueled by easy credit. People buying what they can't afford with money they don't have. Sustained only by the belief that the future will be better. Investments without rational foundation. Cryptocurrencies worth billions without producing anything. Technology companies with astronomical valuations but no profit. NFTs sold for millions. Stocks rising not because companies improved, but because everyone is buying. Blind confidence in technology as savior. The belief that artificial intelligence, blockchain, or any other innovation will magically solve all structural economic problems. And perhaps most dangerous, the absolute belief that governments will always save the system. That central banks will always print enough money, that they will never let everything collapse. This last belief is particularly poisonous because it creates complacency. People stop worrying about risk because they believe there's an infinite safety net beneath them. But here's the brutal truth that history teaches repeatedly. Euphoria is not a sign of strength. It's a sign of extreme fragility. Because when everyone believes nothing can go wrong, no one prepares for when everything goes wrong. When everyone assumes growth is guaranteed, everyone takes excessive risks. When everyone trusts the system blindly, the system becomes dangerously fragile. Euphoria creates the illusion of solidity while hiding deep structural cracks. It's like a building that looks impeccable on the outside, but whose foundations are being silently corroded. Everyone sees the shiny facade and assumes it's safe. No one realizes the base is crumbling. And we're living exactly this now. The perfect euphoria. Irrational confidence. Optimism disconnected from reality. All ingredients are present, all conditions are satisfied, the entire scenario is set. And when euphoria is perfect, when confidence is absolute, when no one can imagine something could go wrong, that's exactly when everything is about to collapse. Because the next stage has already begun. And it operates in silence, corroding the system while everyone celebrates. Before every major collapse, there's a phenomenon that silently destroys the economy's foundation. Invisible inflation. I'm not talking about the inflation that appears in newspapers. I'm not talking about the official numbers governments release. I'm talking about real inflation, the kind that fundamentally changes the cost of your life while everyone pretends it's all under control. This is the inflation that destroys the middle class without them noticing until it's too late. It's the inflation that takes away your purchasing power little by little, month after month, year after year, while your salary remains practically the same. It's the inflation that makes you realize you need to work more hours to buy the same things you bought 5 years ago. It's the inflation that transforms dreams into impossibilities. That makes homeownership unattainable. That makes retirement seem like fantasy. That transforms financial security into luxury for the few. And the most insidious part, it happens slowly enough for you to normalize it, for you to adapt, for you to accept it as just how things are now. Before 1929, there was exactly this. Prices were rising, but gradually. People felt life was getting more expensive. But there was no alarm. No panic. It was just a growing discomfort everyone learned to ignore. Before 2008, the same pattern. The cost of living was skyrocketing, especially in housing. But this was normalized as real estate appreciation and healthy economic growth. No one called it by its real name, uncontrolled asset inflation about to explode. And now? Now we're living the most aggressive version of this invisible inflation the modern world has ever seen. Look at the real numbers, not the official ones. Housing costs in major cities have doubled or tripled in a decade. Rent that was affordable became luxury. Buying a house became an elite privilege. Food costs have risen drastically. The same shopping list you made 5 years ago costs 50%, 70%, sometimes 100% more today. Education became absurdly expensive. Healthcare became a luxury service. Transportation consumes a growing slice of the budget. But at the same time, governments keep saying inflation is controlled, within target, under surveillance. How is this possible? Simple. They changed how they measure inflation, adjusted the formulas, excluded inconvenient items, manipulated the categories, created indices that show what they want to show, not the reality you live. And why do they do this? Because admitting real inflation would mean admitting the system is failing. It would mean recognizing that decades of money printing have consequences. It would mean accepting there's no free lunch in economics. But real inflation doesn't care about official numbers. It corrodes your purchasing power regardless of what statistics say. It destroys savings. It renders conservative investments useless. It forces people to take increasingly greater risks just to maintain the same standard of living. And here's the perfect mechanism that prepares the ground for collapse. When invisible inflation erodes the economy's base, people need to resort increasingly to debt to maintain their lifestyle. They use credit cards, take loans, finance everything. Companies do the same. Governments do the same. Everyone goes deeper into debt because money is worth less. And when the entire economy is sustained by growing mountains of debt, when everyone owes more than they can pay, when the entire system depends on no one asking for their money back, you have the perfect setup for the next stage. Because invisible inflation doesn't destroy the system alone. It just weakens it, just creates the conditions, just prepares the ground. What really triggers the collapse comes after. And it's already happening. Every economic bubble begins looking like legitimate progress. Revolutionary technology, vibrant markets, transformative innovation, disruptive companies receiving billions in investment. Numbers rise, charts point upward. Everyone is making money. The future looks bright. But there's a crucial difference between real growth and bubble. Real growth is sustained by fundamental value. Bubble is sustained only by collective belief. When numbers rise faster than the structures supporting them, when valuations skyrocket without fundamental justification, when everyone is buying not because the asset has value, but because they expect to sell higher to the next person, you don't have growth, you have a bubble, and bubbles always burst. Always. Without exception. 100% of the time. The only question is never only when. It was like this in the 1920s. The American stock market inflated in a massive bubble fueled by rampant speculation. Everyone bought stocks with borrowed money, expecting to sell at profit. Prices rose not because companies improved, but because more people were buying. It was a Ponzi scheme on a national scale. When it exploded in October 1929, the damage was catastrophic. Fortunes evaporated, banks broke, the Great Depression began. It was like this in the 1990s. The dot-com bubble. Any company that put .com in its name received millions in investment, even without business plan, without revenue, without viable product. The belief was that the internet would change everything, and old rules no longer applied. When it burst in 2000, trillions in market value disappeared. Thousands of companies went bankrupt. Millions lost their savings. It was like this in 2000 to 2008. The American housing bubble. Houses valued at absurd prices. People buying multiple properties as investment. Banks lending to anyone. The belief that real estate always goes up. When it exploded in 2008, it almost destroyed the global financial system. It took trillions in government bailouts to avoid total collapse. And now? Now we don't have one bubble. We have multiple simultaneous bubbles, all inflating together, all interconnected, all about to burst. Asset bubble, stocks at historically high valuations, real estate at record prices, assets inflated beyond any rational metric. Technology bubble, tech companies worth billions without profit. Startups receiving absurd valuations based on future potential. Cryptocurrencies with market capitalizations larger than century-old corporations, but producing nothing of tangible value. Debt bubble. Governments owing more than their entire GDP. Companies leveraged to the limit. Consumers buried in credit card, student, mortgage, auto debt. Confidence bubble. The biggest and most dangerous of all. The collective belief that the system is solid, that governments have control, that nothing can really go wrong. And here's what makes the current situation unprecedented. Historically, you had one main bubble at a time. 1920s, stocks. 1990s, technology. 2000s, real estate. But now all exist simultaneously. All connected. All dependent on each other. What does this mean? It means when one bursts, all will burst. The cascade effect will be instantaneous and devastating. And history is crystal clear about one fact. When multiple large bubbles explode together, they never fall smoothly. The destruction is rapid, brutal, and comprehensive. There's no soft landing, no gradual correction. There's only impact. And the worst? Most people can't see bubbles while inside them. It's only in retrospect after they burst that everyone says, "How didn't we see this coming?" But some always see. And those are the ones who survive and thrive. The question is, are you seeing? Or are you among the 99% who will only realize when it's too late? This is the most dangerous and hardest stage to detect. The silent erosion of confidence. Because confidence is an invisible element, intangible, impossible to quantify precisely, but absolutely essential for the functioning of any economic system. Money works because we trust it. Banks work because we trust them. Investments work because we trust the future. Governments work because we trust their legitimacy. Remove confidence and the entire system collapses instantly. And here's what few understand. Confidence doesn't break suddenly. It cracks gradually, fissure by fissure, by doubt, until at some critical moment, the entire structure crumbles at once. It's like a dam. It can seem solid for years, decades even, while small cracks form invisibly underwater. No one sees, no one notices. Until on one specific day, all these microfractures connect, and billions of liters of water explode at once. Today, we see clear and unmistakable signs of this confidence erosion happening at all levels. Governments no one believes anymore. Promises systematically broken. Endless corruption scandals. Contradictory policies. Obvious lies repeated as truth. The result? Global population losing faith in institutions that sustain functional societies. Banks in increasingly fragile image. Money laundering scandals. Market manipulation. Recent bank collapses that needed massive government intervention. With each crisis, more people question if their money is really safe. Companies silently preparing for hard times. Discreet layoffs. Aggressive cost cuts. Investment reductions. Cash accumulation. These actions speak louder than any official statement. And the public notices. Large institutional investors quietly retreating. The most sophisticated, those with access to privileged information, are discreetly reducing risk exposure, moving capital to safer assets, preparing for turbulence. They don't announce this publicly, but the movements are visible to those who know where to look. Population desperate for stability. Financial anxiety at record levels. People working multiple jobs and still struggling to pay bills. Growing sense that the system is failing most while benefiting a few at the top. Each of these signs individually may seem minor, may seem like just normal noise from the economic cycle, but together they form an unmistakable pattern of systemic confidence in accelerated erosion. And here's why this is absolutely critical. Modern economies are confidence machines. They work not because they have intrinsic value, but because everyone collectively believes they have value. Your money is just paper. It has value only because everyone agrees it has. The second everyone stops agreeing, it's just colored paper. Your stocks are just digital records. They're worth something only because everyone believes they're worth it. When confidence goes away, value evaporates. Your bank has your deposits only as numbers in a computer. They lent that money to others. It works only while not everyone asks for their money back at the same time. The moment confidence breaks and everyone runs to withdraw, the bank breaks. The entire modern economic system is built on layers of mutually reinforcing confidence. It's incredibly fragile social engineering disguised as a robust system. And when these layers of confidence begin to peel away, when doubts transform into distrust, when distrust transforms into fear, collapse is no longer a question of if. It's just a matter of time, and time is running out. Because the next stage is already underway. And when you understand what it means, you'll never sleep peacefully again. There's a saying in finance: when you see rats abandoning the ship, don't ask where they're going, just follow. Before every major collapse, there's a period where smart money, the big players, sophisticated institutions, investors with privileged access to information, silently begin to exit. They don't announce, don't explain, don't warn, they just move. Reduce exposure discreetly. Reposition portfolios, move capital to safer assets, liquidate risky positions, accumulate cash. And they do all this with maximum silence possible, because they don't want to cause panic that would accelerate the fall before they finish exiting. It's the silent flight, and it's always the prelude to collapse. Before 1929, sophisticated investors began leaving the stock market discreetly months before the fall. Small investors, excited with profits, kept buying. The big ones were selling. When the crash came, the small ones were destroyed. The big ones were safe. Before 2008, investment banks began getting rid of toxic assets linked to subprime mortgages long before the public collapse. They knew the mortgages were rotten, but they kept selling these products to clients while secretly liquidating their own positions. When everything crumbled, clients broke. Banks had already exited. And now? Now we see exactly the same pattern repeating on a global scale. Massive capital flows being redirected. Billions leaving emerging markets. Billions exiting risk investments. Billions migrating to gold, dollars, government bonds from countries considered safer. Strategic investments being repositioned. Pension funds reducing stocks and increasing bonds. Hedge funds building defensive positions. Billionaires buying agricultural land, natural resources, tangible assets. Fortunes being moved for protection. The ultra-rich diversifying internationally. Buying alternative citizenships. Establishing residences in multiple countries. Preparing exit routes. Insiders selling shares of their own companies. CEOs and top executives liquidating personal stocks in record volumes. They run these companies, have full access to information, and they're selling. What does that tell you? And the most revealing part. All this happens with minimal media coverage. You don't see headlines, don't hear alarms. Everything is presented as normal portfolio reallocation or prudent diversification. But when you aggregate all these movements, when you look at the total pattern, the message is crystal clear. Those who know are exiting. And here's the brutal truth about this phase. When smart money flees silently, collapse is no longer a remote possibility. It's guaranteed destiny. Because these players aren't reacting to hypothetical future problems. They have access to information you don't have. They see data that isn't public. They understand risks that aren't openly discussed. And when all simultaneously decide it's time to exit, that it's time to protect themselves, that it's time to assume defensive positions, it's because they know something the public hasn't realized yet. They know stage 6 is coming, the stage where cracks become ruptures, where discrete problems become public crises, where the visible system finally reflects the invisible rot. And this stage isn't in the distant future, it has already begun. Now we arrive at the final stages, the ones everyone eventually sees, the ones that make headlines, the ones everyone retrospectively says were obvious. Stage 6, the rupture. This is the moment when something breaks publicly. The rupture is never grandiose at the start, never begins with the big banks, the main governments, the central markets. It always starts at the periphery. In a discrete failure that most initially ignore. A regional bank that collapses. A large but not giant company that unexpectedly goes bankrupt. A secondary market that freezes. A small country that defaults. A critical commodity whose price spikes or plummets inexplicably. Individually, each of these events can be contained. Can be explained as isolated anomaly. Can be managed. But here's what makes this stage so dangerous. The rupture never stays isolated. It spreads. Like crack in glass. Like fire in dry forest. Like virus in population without immunity. Because in the highly interconnected modern financial world, everything is linked to everything. Banks owe each other. Companies depend on each other. Markets are all intertwined. Countries are all connected by trade and debt. So when one part breaks, stress propagates. Other parts start showing weakness. More cracks appear. More failures happen. And at some point, the domino effect becomes unstoppable. It was like this in 1929. Started with a specific bank, then another, then larger banks, then the stock market. Within weeks, the entire system was collapsing. It was like this in 2008. Started with some hedge funds linked to subprime mortgages, then Bear Stearns, then Lehman Brothers. Then the entire global banking system was at the abyss's edge. And now, experts and authorities pretend it's all under control, that systems are more resilient, that we learned from past mistakes. But anyone who really studied financial history knows. The rupture is not the end. Never was. It's just the visible trigger that unleashes the final stage. Stage 7. The panic. This is the moment when everyone realizes simultaneously. The moment when collective denial breaks. The moment when millions of people wake up at once and say, "Oh my God, this is real." And then everything happens absurdly fast. Markets freefall. Circuit breakers are triggered repeatedly trying to stop the bleeding. It doesn't work. Governments appear on national broadcasts promising solutions they can't deliver. Each promise is followed by more panic because everyone realizes that if governments are desperate, the situation is worse than imagined. Banks dramatically restrict credit. Companies that depended on credit for daily operations start failing. Mass layoffs begin. People enter survival mode. Bank runs to withdraw money. Panic buying of essential supplies. Conflicts over resources. It's the moment when everyone realizes they were trusting a structure that was already broken for years. That the numbers were lies. That the guarantees were illusion. That the emperor never had clothes. And when that moment arrives, when panic becomes the dominant emotion, there's no communication strategy, government policy, or central bank intervention that can restore confidence, because you can't restore something that was fundamentally broken. You can't recreate confidence with the same institutions and systems that betrayed it. The world changes at that moment, permanently, irreversibly. Nothing goes back to what it was before. And now we arrive at the part that will completely change how you see your life, your future, and the world around you. Everything I've described until now, all 7 stages, are not predictions, are not opinions, are not speculative theories about what might happen. They are facts about what is happening now. Stage 1, euphoria, active, irrational confidence at record levels. Stage 2, invisible inflation, active, purchasing power being systematically destroyed. Stage 3, bubbles, active, multiple massive bubbles in assets, technology, debt. Stage 4, fall of confidence, active, accelerated erosion of confidence in institutions. Stage 5, capital flight, active, smart money discreetly repositioning. Stage 6, discrete ruptures, active, failures starting to appear at the periphery. Stage 7, initial panic, beginning, first signs of panic in specific sectors. All 7, simultaneously, for the first time since 2008. And here's what makes this completely unprecedented. Historically, these stages unfolded over years, sometimes decades. There was time between them. There was opportunity for correction. There was possibility of effective intervention. But now, all are compressed, accelerated, happening simultaneously. Why? Because the massive interventions after 2008, the unprecedented money printing, the artificially low interest rates for over a decade, all this didn't solve structural problems, just postponed them, just hid them, just amplified them. It's like having a serious infection and instead of treating it properly, just taking painkillers to not feel pain. The pain temporarily disappears, but the infection keeps growing, spreading, worsening. And when you finally can't ignore it anymore, it's too late for simple treatment. Now it requires radical surgery. That's where we are now. Decades of unresolved structural problems, just postponed, are all converging at the same time. Global debts at unpayable levels. Monetary systems based on evaporating confidence. Extreme inequality creating social instability. Increasing geopolitical tensions. Accelerating disruptive technological changes. Climate changes creating additional pressures. All these elements, all these system stresses, all reaching rupture points simultaneously. And here's the truth that will keep you awake at night. We're not walking toward collapse as future possibility, we're inside the collapse now. It has already begun. It's just not obvious to most yet because it's happening in relative slow motion. But for those who understand the signs, for those who know the formula, for those who studied history, the reality is inescapable. The collapse isn't coming, it's already here. So here we are, at the end of this journey through the 7 stages that always precede major collapses. And now you know that collapses aren't random. They follow a precise formula. You know that this formula is active now, all 7 stages operating simultaneously. You know that what's coming is not speculative possibility, but inevitable reality. And with this knowledge comes a choice, because collapse is never really about numbers, debts, or markets. It's about people, about decisions individuals make, about how you choose to respond to what's happening. And history teaches us something crucial. No one really escapes economic cycles. Rich and poor, intelligent and ignorant, all are affected when entire systems collapse. But there's a fundamental difference between those who are destroyed by collapses and those who thrive after them. Those who are destroyed are those who don't see the signs, or see them but choose to deny them, or understand theoretically but don't act. They panic when it's already late, make desperate decisions at the worst possible moment, and lose everything. Those who thrive are those who understand the pattern before most. They don't panic because they already expected it. They don't make desperate decisions because they already prepared. They don't lose everything because they already repositioned. And when the dust settles, when chaos passes, when new systems emerge from the ashes of old ones, these are the ones who not only survive but thrive. Because they understood that crises destroy the unprepared but create massive opportunities for the prepared. History shows this repeatedly. The greatest fortunes are made during and after major crises. The greatest life changes happen when old systems collapse and new ones emerge. But only for those who saw it coming. Only for those who prepared. Only for those who had courage to see reality and act on it. And now you have a simple but profound choice. You can close this video and return to your normal life. Can pretend you didn't see what you saw. Can hope that somehow you're wrong. Can join the 99% who will only realize when it's too late. Or you can accept the reality of what's happening. Can start preparing. Can position yourself to not just survive, but thrive in what's coming. The choice is yours. The knowledge is now yours. But knowledge without action is useless. So the real question isn't if the collapse is coming. We already know it is. The real question is, what are you going to do about it? Because 2026 is not just another year. It's the turning point that history always repeats. And if you want to understand exactly how to prepare, how to position yourself, how to transform crisis into opportunity, you need to continue this journey. Subscribe now. The next chapter reveals what to do with this knowledge, how to protect what you have, how to take advantage of what's coming, how to be among the few who thrive while many fail. Don't let this knowledge pass, Because the difference between destruction and prosperity is simply this. Those who thrive saw the signs and acted. The formula is complete. The stages are active. The collapse has already begun. Now it's your turn to decide which side of history you want to be on.